Welcome to Sailing Saoirse. I'm Tegan. My parents sold our house, sold their business, and bought a 38-foot island spirit catamaran with the goal to travel the world. Only problem is, it needed a complete refit. After 3 years, we are finally ready to set sail. This is Colben, my husband, Karen, my mum, Denver, my brother, and Robin, my dad. Together we make up Sailing Saoirse.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sailing Saoirse. In this video we take you through how we caught fish during our crossing and managed to keep our freezers full so that we could keep all the nice tasty meats and stuff for when we really wanted it, and we ate a lot of fish as well. And in this video I take you through the various lures that we used, what sort of rod and reel setup is preferred, and the use of bungee cords.
Okay, I need you to maybe start. Okay. Yeah. It's up.
You're broke. Okay, we're losing
Yeah, we're losing all our lines. I'm gonna get schooled here. Okay, Tegan, I need you to hold this.
Yeah. Colben, you're not even. Are you getting him in at all?
No, we're gaining a little bit of line. Slowly. Just get in the shower.
On the other side of the boat. No.
This is the lure that we got our longbow spearfish on. Just an ordinary pulsator Dorado catcher is the name. And this lure worked really hard during the crossing. You can see there's tails missing and the eyes all punched in from bullfish trying to smash it. So the story goes like this. Basically we hooked the longbow spearfish and it screamed off. Took a decent amount of line. And we managed to get it back to the boat though, quite relatively close. Within about half an hour we had the fish under the boat. When the fish went under the boat, it actually swam from the starboard sugar scoop this way and got itself quite smartly wrapped around our sail drive, which is, I was quite panicked at that time because it's a vital piece of equipment to your sail drive and you don't really want to damage it trying to fish. So I was a little bit panicked in the whole situation of how do we get it out, how do we and not tangle it up in the prop. So the engine was off, luckily. We were using one engine, our starboard engine, and so the line didn't get chewed up at first. Unfortunately, it took too long for us to figure out how to get the fish up, because it was just swimming below the keel like this the whole time. It took us too long to figure out how to get it up to the surface of the water so I could grab the line and actually try and release the fish. So in turn it actually started going belly up and started drowning. So we ended up keeping that fish, and what we actually did was Tegan started releasing a bit of line, because I'd given her the rod and I was trying to figure out what was going on. Given her the rod and she'd started releasing a bit of line, and as she started releasing a bit of line like this, obviously the unwrapped board was releasing on the fish's end, so the fish came up like this, belly up, and that was when we were able to grab the bill and just bring it up onto the deck neatly. And there was no fight left in it, unfortunately, and I'm not going to release a fish that's not going to make it. I think it's just a waste. So he didn't go to waste. When we still actually got some of that spearfish on board, and it's awesome fish, and an awesome catch for me personally. It's a rare catch, longbill spearfish.
Can hardly even pull.
Doesn't want to eat guppies.
It's all in the lure size, eh? You're going too big. I don't know what it is. Could be a small tuna.
Or a piece of kelp.
No, it's fighting. Definitely fighting back.
So our freezers are full. We don't want anything big. We just want some tuna for sushi. So if it's not a tuna, it's being released again.
Oh no, it's a sort of.
Oh.
We can release it. You can still eat it. Not release it.
Or is it a sada?
Oh, is it a soda again? We want sushi.
Same thing. This is what the tin tuna.
He looks different to the other one. The other one didn't have stripes.
Okay, so we're moving on to the lipped lures now, which are the Rapalas. I actually call this one the Ernie after a nice friend that gave it to me in Saldanha Bay Yacht Club. His name was Ernie, so we named this one the Ernie. We got a nice Dorado on this one. The hooks are all rusty, typical. And these lures, we only pulled these lures when the boat was doing 3 knots. I found that you can pull them faster, they are rated to go faster, but as soon as we got higher than 4 knots in turbulent seas, because the boat's going like this the whole time, the lure wants to go like this the whole time as well, so it pulls and then stops, and then pulls and then stops as the boat slides down waves. So it doesn't really swim the best, and often it just jumps out the water and ends up catching the lure next to it or something like that. But we did catch fish on this. We actually got a Dorado on the Dorado colored lure. Quite interesting. We've got a few lures that you can use. We used, well, I like to just trawl smaller lures for Dorado, so we trawled this guy quite a lot, especially on our smaller setup, which is got a lot less line capacity and things. So you want to, if you don't have enough line capacity on your reel, you don't want to be pulling big lures and stuff, because you can always catch a big fish on a big lure, but you can't catch a small fish on a big lure. So we used this guy quite a lot. It's just a small little pulsator skirt, and the Dorado really loved this thing. Okay.
No, I'm gonna lose all my line.
Sorry about bugs.
Oh no.
What do you think, Robin?
I'm gonna get full. I can't stop. I'm gonna get full. This is not a small little lure, man. What the heck? Okay. Anyway.
You need a glove? Doesn't help, they got no fingers.
Slow down, man. Yeah. This is on the smallest lure I had.
So the new plan of action is that Colben's pulling the line in by hand and Keegan's reeling.
This is marriage.
Which way?
I reckon if they lose the fish, they've got to get some of their line back. It's just about being spoiled.
He specifically put it on the smallest lure in the box. Catch just enough for dinner tonight, and
So you might have a month's worth of fish.
we'll either have a month's worth of fish or no fishing gear left.
Hi, man. Mario.
No.
I'm going back to go line there. It's taken like 200 meters of line.
Do you need a cloth or something?
Ready with a gaff.
Colben thinks he lost.
Oh no, it's gone.
Yeah, super. So what happened?
Well, Don's handed to us.
Look at those fingers.
Can you believe it?
Look at that.
I think it was a tuna.
Yeah, wahoo would have broken the line. with its teeth.
It's definitely a tuna.
Okay, so this little tuna feather, we started pulling this lure because I really wanted to catch a small yellowfin, and well, this is what my first choice would be. And we actually ended up hooking or going on for the biggest run and fight that we had on the crossing. I'm unsure of what it was, but I'd like to think it was a tuna. It had really big head nods, and we almost got spooled. It was a serious fish. I mean, after 30 minutes of fighting, the fish was like, we had gained 5 meters, 10 meters of line, and the fish was just holding like a solid dead weight in the water. It was quite a big fish. Unfortunately, we lost that hook. We lost that fish. The hook actually bent open after about half an hour, and I think we just put too much pressure on the fish, or the boat was going a little bit fast as well. We could have tried to slow down a little bit more, but it was getting late in the afternoon, and I wanted to try and get the fish in. I do, however, think it was either a big tuna or probably a shark or a marlin. It was just serious dead weight and big head nods and things, so who knows what it could have been, but it was the lure that worked. And the reason why I actually adjusted this lure slightly to give it a little bit more tinsel, so I added that little, so in South Africa we use these skirts for catching kuta, or we call them kuta. They're actually king mackerel around the rest of the world, and that's just gave it a bit more shine in the water. The water was so blue and so clear, for the visibility was just so far down that I thought that this would bring up any fish from the bottom. And I have done it the wrong way. I would never suggest tying your hook on like that. It's really if you have to, because you don't have crimps or things like that, and we didn't have the right size crimps for this size line, so I ended up tying it. But I will show you the way that you are supposed to do it, that is meant for catching big fish. So this lure came rigged ready, and before we go into what fish we caught and stuff, I just want to show you what it is supposed to look like. So that is a very nice neat crimp. The line is not squashed. You've got a bit of chafe tube over here so that your line is protected all the time, and that there will catch big fish. Then the hook setup on the back is the same. Nice neat crimp, bit of steel on the bite trace here, double hook. Stiff rig, that is, they call it a stiff rig, and we got our biggest Dorado on this lure actually, and with that fish we were sailing. It was relatively late in the afternoon. We saw a pellet floating in the water, and often Dorado like to congregate around floating objects because there's a lot of bait fish that like to hide in those areas around the object, and as soon as the words came out of my mouth, the reel went, and we were on with a decent sized Dorado. I think it was about 7 kilos, 8 kilos, and for us that was a good size. Obviously they get a lot bigger. So that was that lure, and that's how you should rig all your lures, no matter the size. Get the right crimps and crimp it properly.
No, we just might have to turn slightly to starboard. Maybe I can bring it like yeah, full sail. Let's see. It's not a very
So what did you see?
So we saw some floating material of some sort in the water, or robin saw it. And we looked at it and it looked like a floating pallet, and I said, oh, perfect place for Dorado. And the rod. As I said that, the rod went.
Imagine you just see a marlin.
The phone looks very pretty. It's going to look prettier on our plate.
Not quite. You getting tired, eh?
No, it's just awkward.
Yeah,
Sitting with a
some
fly
coming
in
like
front
this.
of it.
Keep the pressure on the whole time.
like a sign. Oh, he's quite pretty. Don't tell Dan that.
Yeah.
Oh, don't lose him.
Look at the color.
To show you the lure, what the lure looks like, it's a solid resin head like this. It's got a cup face, so this actually, when it comes up to the surface, it creates a bit of a bubble trail, and most offshore fishermen will know that pelagic fish like to follow bubble trails. Yeah, and nice skirt, red and white. Red and white is sometimes my favorite color, and that's all it is. Neat little fishy like this. And the reason we pulled these lures the most is because often we were in turbulent seas, and sometimes going a little bit too fast for lipped lures like rapalas and egg-traps and things like that. And these lures you can pull at high speeds. I mean, you can pull this little lure up to like 10 knots, I would say, and it will still swim perfectly, whereas the rapalas tend to jump out the water the whole time and you get line twists and things. So we ended up pulling these a lot of the time, but we did pull some Dorado. We did pull some rapalas on the crossing as well.
So we're busy eating dinner, and Karen says, oh, we've never caught a late afternoon fish, and as she finishes that sentence, the reel starts going. Come, woman.
It's still on.
Yeah. Okay, assume the position. And then, so now you just lift with your hand, and as you drop the rod down, you wind at the same time.
What do you mean wine? It's just as loose
Okay,
as
wait,
it
hold
goes.
on. Okay.
Oh, there you go. Sort of.
Nice. It's a wahoo. It's a wahoo. Bring that thing. Bring that.
No, just
Grab it.
Keep it tight. Keep it tight. Keep it
keep
tight.
it tight. Don't pull it.
It's a wahoo.
Oh, nice.
Well done, Mo.
Colben put a wahoo in my life.
No way.
Oh, there's a
That is huge tuna.
no.
Huge tuna. No way. Bring that thing. Bring it.
I'm going.
settled down for dinner, and the rod was still out. It was low light, and Karen said it's quite odd that we've never had a late afternoon bite, and I mean the words had not even come out of her mouth yet, and the reel screamed, and we were on with this fish. And so it wasn't a huge fight, but it gave a good fight. And obviously a wahoo is a prize fish on most boats, so we were quite stoked with that, and it's excellent eating as well. And when we got it up to the boat, if you look in the video, there was actually a school of tuna trailing below it, and for some reason at the most crucial part of gaffing the fish, bringing it on board, I was more focused on the tuna below it, so we had to get that fish on board ASAP so I could get another lure back out and try and get those tuna, but to no avail. Alrighty, so this is what we got the wahoo on yesterday, and in South Africa we actually pull these for queen mackerel, called crack spoon. Old school, nothing fancy about it, just a plain old piece of metal. But we got very lucky in that we had this snap shackle, so I usually just put a snap shackle on like this, just for easy tying on to lures and stuff, and you don't end up having to cut your leader away every time you tie a lure. So we had that on like that, and I think that was probably our only saving grace. If it had been a bigger wahoo and its mouth was a lot longer, it probably would have chopped us off, and we would have not had a delicious wahoo dinner for tonight. So yeah, we got very lucky, and that's just one of the lures we've been using. It's amazing how that hook was silver yesterday, it's now completely black with rust. Nothing lasts on the ocean. So there are two main ways in which you can actually catch fish on a sailboat. One of them is using a traditional bungee cord and hand line with a couple of 100 meters of line trawling at the back of the boat. The only problem with the rod and reel is that if you don't have a big enough reel with enough line, if you hook a big fish, your line is going to just go, because big tuna like to run, marlin like to run, and yeah, so it's pretty imperative having a reel with enough spool capacity to fit at least 600 meters of braid is preferred, because you can get a lot more of it on the reel. It's thinner than the monofilament. So on this reel, this is a TLD 32 speed, the 2 speed being that it's got 2 gear ratios. So the 1 gear ratio is 4.0 to 1, and the low gear ratio is 1.7 to 1, and that basically means that one turn of this handle turns the spool either 4 times or turns the spool 1.07 times. I like to call it like a 4x4 kind of 4x4 situation, like a car. Okay, so the use of bungee cords is actually quite simple. So you've got a bit of spearfishing rubber, got to be 20mm so that it's quite strong, and in this one it's actually got a bit of Dyneema threaded through the bungee and out the other end, and it's actually tied on quite nicely. So on the one end I've put a big clip swivel like that, just a clip, not a swivel. And so basically this end goes on to my 100 meters of monofilament, and this end gets attached to the boat, and this is your reel. Basically this is the shock absorber, and this is what the fish is going to end up fighting when it hooks up. Here is the line, and so this is what gets hooked up onto the clip over here. I'm not going to undo it now because it's a huge mission to undo it. And on this end here I have a big crane swivel which goes to my bit of leader before the lure, so that all the lures, as you've seen, have a bit of leader attached to them, and that leader stays on the lure continuously, so that you don't have to cut your line to tie a knot every single time. So it's a little bit roughly set up. It did have a bit of heat shrink over here because I was out of chafe tube. My crimps weren't exactly the right size, but I needed to make do, and I didn't have a great crimping tool. But that is how it goes with a crimp, a loop, split ring, crane swivel, and then your lure goes on the other end of this. And I've got about 100 meters of line on this, I would say at least, and that we didn't have great luck with this. I'm unsure why. We just had a lot better luck on the rod and reel. We hooked up on a couple birds. Shame, poor albatross, it was very sad. And so when we figured that there was a lot of birds around, we were pulling surface lures, so we actually ended up having to pull rapalers to get the lures deeper down into the water so the birds couldn't see them, and that we actually couldn't fish for 2 days because there were so many birds, and after hooking 2 of them we didn't want to hook anymore, so we just put the rod and reel away for a day or 2 so that we could get further offshore, and the birds obviously stayed closer inshore. We've got a few rods on board. This is the one that we used most of the time. It's a Shimano Talavera, so its line weight is 20 to 50 pounds. Medium heavy action, and 6'6", so it's a one piece, a little bit difficult to store, but that's why we've got a rod rack up above the cockpit area. And I like this rod because it does give you more action with the fight. It's a little bit lighter compared to a solid marlin rod or something like that, which to me is almost like a broomstick. I forgot to mention the braid on here. We've got 600 meters of 80-pound braid. I wouldn't go any lighter than 80-pound braid because you never know what might happen. So another option for yachts that are doing good speeds, I would say 7 to 10 knots. This is a good option for you. It's a Hilco Max 120, I think it is. And this lure you can pull, you can pull this lure up to like 16 knots or so, and you'll get a lot of fish on this if you're pulling it at the right speed, that is. It's designed to go fast, and you could get wahoo on this, Dorado, tuna, even billfish. I couldn't imagine why a billfish wouldn't want to eat this. It's got a nice rattle, and you get them in various different colors and sizes. This one's a little bit older, a little bit rustier, but good lures to have if your boat does speeds greater than 6 knots. In our first few days of the trip, we used a lure like this, and we hooked 2 mako sharks on this lure. And there's one thing I want to show you is this. These hooks were brand new 2 months ago, and so it's extremely important, and it's a mistake on my behalf. I was not prepared for what was coming. We should have put all these lures in sealing Tupperwares, and it's always good to, once you're finished using a lure, rinse it off in fresh water and let it dry first before you stick it in the box, because this lure alone will start causing all the other hooks in the box to rust as well. It's like a plague with fishing lures. So these hooks need to be changed, and we're stuck here in Brazil and I have no idea where to change them. So he's going to go back in the box and get retired for a few months until I can find a place where I can replace hooks. Luckily we've got a good stock of lures and things, which is also a good thing to have. Then we pulled this little spoon. I found that the visibility was great, and this spoon you can pull, I would say, at any speed. I don't think there is a speed limit on this lure. It's quite basic. It's just a normal stamped J-hook, with also very rusty because, disappointing. Stamped J-hook with a screw through the spoon, and it actually gets bolted on like that. I'm unsure of how secure that actually is, but we used these a lot when I was fishing in Dubai, and we hooked, we got a lot of king mackerel and stuff on them, but on this trip we pulled this, and late in the evening I was hoping for a bit of a bit of reflection down into the water like that. You can see as it shines as the sun is going down. So that's what I was going for, having that reflecting down 100 meters into the water. And while we were having dinner one night, we hooked up onto a pretty nice wahoo. It was only 6 kilos, but for us 6 kilos is enough to fill up the gaps in the freezer. Obviously we don't want more fish than we can keep. That would just be a waste. So my ideal setup would be a Shimano Tiagra 50 or 80 with the corresponding rod. Obviously with my budget that was not an option, and so we just used this TLD 2-speed. This is what I used for kayak fishing in South Africa, and that's all we had, and I wasn't about to go and spend 15 grand on a new offshore setup because there were better things to spend money on. Some would say not. So yeah, that would be my dream setup, Tiagra 50 or 80 with the right amount of braided line and decent top shot and the corresponding rod. When the time comes, we'll get one of those.